So I'm a fan of Star Trek, and ahead of... Wait a minute. Let's do this right. Okay, that's better. I'm a fan of Star Trek, and ahead of Section 31 being released on Paramount Plus on Friday the 24th of January, I thought I would give you my Star Trek film rankings. I'm going to tell you what I think each movie, what I like, what I don't like, and we're going to be putting it into tier maker. So let's start off in release order. Star Trek The Motion Picture. Star Trek The Motion Picture is the first Star Trek film, and look, its biggest flaw is that it's really boring. I'm sorry, fans out there, it is good in some ways. Like, it tries to lean on the more cerebral aspects of Star Trek, so it's a bit more of a thinky one, but by doing that, it sacrifices a lot of the fun that existed in the original series of Star Trek. The relationship between Kirk, Spock, and McCoy is dead. Anytime a character looks like it's about to have fun, it's trodden on completely. Don't get me wrong, there are some iconic moments in there. The first time that we see the Enterprise refit, and of course, the first time we hear the theme that is then used in Star Trek The Next Generation, the new look Klingons, all of that fantastic, but the movie just plods along, and I say its biggest sin is that it's boring. This is why it's going into the C tier. Next up, The Wrath of Khan. Second Star Trek film is like the polar opposite of the motion picture. They realized how cold and how boring the first movie was, and it's replaced with a warmth and energy that wasn't there. We've now got the maroon uniforms, which became iconic. Banter is restored between Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, and yes, it is a little bit maudlin as Kirk realizes he's aging, but we have this fantastic sort of story involving an old enemy, Khan, from the episode Space Seed. Flaws aside, such as Chekhov never met Khan, this movie is as close to perfect as you can get, so it is going into my S tier. Next up, we've got Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. Whilst being the third movie, this is technically the middle movie of Star Trek's one true trilogy, which is Wrath of Khan, Search for Spock, and Voyage Home. Search for Spock kind of suffers from being that middle child. Don't get me wrong, it is a lot of fun and there's some great sequences in it. The heist of the Enterprise is fantastic. Standing on the hill in Genesis watching the Enterprise crash to the planet's surface is great as well, but isn't quite there. It definitely feels like a middle filler film, which is why it's going into B tier. Next up, Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home. Like, the premise is the crew of the Enterprise goes back to 1986 San Francisco to find a pair of humpback whales. This should be a ridiculous movie, and it is a ridiculous movie, but it's ridiculously fun. Now, for me, this feels like Star Trek's Christmas film. I know it's not set at Christmas, doesn't have a story to do with Christmas, but it feels like a Christmas film, and it is a lot of fun. Each of the characters has a moment to shine. There's a lot of humor through it, from Captain There Be Whales here, to nuclear vessels, to Sulu not being able to switch off the wipers on a helicopter. It is great fun. The story is small but huge at the same time. It is such a great watch. It's going straight up into that S tier. Next up, we've got The Final Frontier, Star Trek 5. This movie receives a lot of hate, and it's not without good reason, but I'm going to go out and defend this movie a little bit. I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be. It has some of the best character moments between our main three, whether it's the camping scenes at the beginning and end, top and tail of the movie, whether it's the confronting their pain scene, which is fantastic as well. This is the best we've seen Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. Yes, the movie has a lot of flaws. Would the crew of the Enterprise be so quick to turn their back on Kirk? I don't think so. There's cheap gags such as Scotty knocking his head after saying he knows every inch of the Enterprise. It does have its flaws, but it's not a terrible film. It's actually very watchable. It's going into C tier. And we come up to the last of the original series crew movies, Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country. This is an absolute gem of a movie. It is phenomenal. It's a political thriller, but what I love is that it feels like the culmination of everything that this crew has been through. They're getting to the end of their careers, they're confronted with their fears, they're confronted with the fear of the unknown, and it is absolutely wonderfully done. You have brilliant casting with Christopher Plummer as General Chang. We have Sulu now as the captain of the Excelsior. Beginning to end, this is a movie I watch over and over again. So for that reason, straight up into the S tier. Star Trek Generations. So this is the first of the next gen movies, and again, it's a bit of a contentious one. I'm going to go out on a limb and defend it, mainly because this was the first Star Trek movie that I got to see in the cinemas, so it has a special place in my heart. Is it good? Arguably no, but it has some great moments in it. We have Data finally using his emotions chip. The destruction of the Enterprise. Actually, that whole sequence is brilliant. Okay, they're taken down by a bird of prey, but come on, the actual crash sequence, absolutely fantastic. And it's just a movie that I take a lot of great joy with. Funnily enough, even though it has a Christmas scene, I still think Voyage Home is Star Trek's Christmas film. Look, it is fine as a film. I enjoy it. It's going into the B tier. Star Trek First Contact. I love this film. This is my number one film. Everything about it is just great. From the opening scene where we're seeing Picard confronting his PTSD from being assimilated by the Borg, all the way through to time travel, meeting Zephyr and Cochrane. We've got an A story where they're trying to defeat the Borg on the ship, and a B story where they're trying to help Zephyr and Cochrane build the Phoenix. We're just seeing the best of the Next Generation crew in this movie. It's a movie I absolutely love. I watch over and over again. It is my number one, and that's why it's going straight up into that S tier. Star Trek Insurrection. Again, this is a movie that receives a lot of hate. I don't think hate. Again, it's not a movie I think deserves a lot of hate or a lot of the criticism that it gets. At its worst, it's an extended episode, but it's actually got quite a few fun, great moments in it. The singing of the HMS Pinafore to try and capture Data, definitely feeling violent tendencies, a lot of fun, and it's a very Star Trek story, a very Star Trek film. Like, if you want to talk about Star Trek values, I think Insurrection actually has it at its core. As I said, it does feel like a little bit of an extended episode, so it does drag in a little bit, and it doesn't have sort of the same stakes in it. And it does have that joystick that controls the Enterprise. So for that reason, we're going to stick it in the C tier. Star Trek Nemesis. I remember when I went to go see this in the cinema. I sat down, and after seeing Star Trek Enterprise on TV get cancelled, I went to go see Star Trek Nemesis, and it felt like the end of Star Trek. It felt like this is it. There's never going to be Star Trek again. This movie was a death knell. It's not a great film. There are some great moments in it. So, for example, the Romulan Senate opening scene is actually great. It had me excited at the beginning, but as the film went on, it just plodded. It felt tired, and it felt like it was clearly made by someone who didn't like Star Trek. It's not great. The redeeming features it has do not outweigh the unredeeming features it has. For that reason, this is the first F tier film. Star Trek 2009. So this is a film that I went into with some trepidation about. It was J.J. Abrams directed, but you know what? It's a lot of fun. It's a good film. Is it a good Star Trek film? Yes and no, but it's a great film otherwise, and it definitely brought the franchise back, and if it hadn't been for that film, we wouldn't have all the new stuff that we have now, including Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks. The casting of this movie, because it's based before the original series, the casting's really good, especially Carl Urban as Bones. Oh, he absolutely nails that. It's a film that I do enjoy going back to and watching because it is a lot of fun. So for that reason, it's going into the A tier. Star Trek Into Darkness, aka let's do Wrath of Khan again. I don't want to say too much about this film. One of my friends put it best. If this film was just a science fiction film that wasn't attached to the Star Trek franchise, it would actually be alright. But it's not. It's attached to the Star Trek franchise, and it just doesn't work. Where Wrath of Khan works is that you feel the stakes, and you feel that there is an emotional need for Kirk to beat Khan, and for Khan to beat Kirk. Don't feel that at all with this movie. The motivation, I understand the motivation, but I don't buy into it. It feels like a pale imitation, looks like a pale imitation. It's not the best of that little trilogy of movies. So for that reason, this is my other F tier. Star Trek Beyond. So after Into Darkness, I was definitely worried about this film, but oh my god, they pulled it back. Directed by Justin Lin, I was worried that this is going to be Fast and Furious in space, and kind of is, but it has Star Trek at its core. It feels like a little bit like Search for Spock, where they all team up and they have their own little jobs, and they all shine in those jobs. But we also have a villain whose motivations are really good, really compelling. And it just feels like a proper Star Trek film. The first of the trilogy that actually, of J.J. Abrams' trilogy, that actually feels like a Star Trek film. For that reason, I'm sticking it in the A tier. So that is my Star Trek movie rankings. With Section 31 coming out on Friday, it'll be interesting to see where I slot that in. So I'll be watching it over the weekend, and I'll probably make a little video to let you know what I think about it and where it is going to sit in with my existing rankings. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel, trying to head towards 500 subscribers here. And let me know what your rankings are in the comments as well. Thanks for watching.